The reason most people struggle is they don't have any historical evidence that their strategy works. So they have a lack of confidence. That's where I think trading psychology, there is an element of it that's absolutely true, but what's typically branded as trading psychology is not true. Trading is not easy, but it should be straightforward. Women are the fastest growing demographic in trading right now. You can look at people who are good at something, and you can look at the things they do and you can say they're good at it because they do these things. But the question is, are they good at this because of all these things that they do? Or do they do all of these things because they're good at it and because they're serious?
He's led trading floors. He's a 5-time FTMO leaderboard trader. He's made multiple 6 figures from the markets, and his students have withdrawn hundreds of thousands too. He's traded during some of the toughest market conditions and still made it out on top. It's safe to say that our guest today has essentially done it all. This episode is going to be value-packed, so if you haven't already, make sure you have your notepad. I don't want to keep you waiting much longer, so please, without further ado, help me welcome Sam KB. Hey Sam, man, how you doing, bro?
It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it.
So am I, man. I know I just did a very quick introduction, but if possible, could you just give the audience a little introduction about yourself? Maybe how long you've been trading for?
Yeah.
Just a little bit about you, because I know we're going to dive deep into it. So
yeah, absolutely. So as you said, I'm Samuel Kavanagh. I go by Sam KB online. It's got to the stage, even some of my closest friends call me Sam KB. They think it's funny. My wife, however, she calls me Samuel. When people call me Sam, it drives her up the wall. I've been Samuel
Really?
forever. Yeah, it does. But I've been got involved in the markets back in 2015. I was still in high school at the time, so I'm knocking on the door of 26 right now. I'm not super old, but I have had a very, very colorful career. There's a lot of stuff has gone on, and some of that has just been timing, just being in the way of opportunity as it passed by almost. I don't want people to listen to this and think, oh my goodness, you must be just such a legend. Right place, right time has been around for a lot of this stuff. But I grew up in a working class household on a council estate. I didn't come from money or anything like that. And finance really, when I first got a grip of it, it seemed like my gateway to something a little bit better. And that is, that has panned out. So it's been around 10 years since I started trading. But more importantly than all that, I'm a born again Christian. I'm a trader, and trading has my passion and all the rest of it. But far, I'm a father as well and a husband. But far and away above that, I'm a born again Christian.
Love that. And actually, I want to touch on that. As a born again Christian, was this something that you did recently, or maybe like before you got into trading?
Yeah.
How long have you been a born again Christian?
So, it's great that we're jumping into this straight away because, like I said, in terms of importance, that's like right up there. Actually, I was speaking to the taxi driver on the way over, the Uber driver from the airport. We had like an hour and a half drive, and that was what we were speaking about most of the time. But I, like many people, I kind of grew up in a Christian household. My family would occasionally go to church and stuff. It wasn't really anything that meant something to us beyond something you'd done, on a Saturday or a Sunday. And it was really only probably 5 years ago when I was running the trading floor, when everything seemed to be going great in life, had the car, all the rest of it, the social circles. And I really thought I had it all, but deep down I had that emptiness inside, and the story, it would be too long, it'd take hours to tell you the whole story, but effectively I came to a point where I realized, my goodness, all of these things that I'm doing in life, the success and all the rest of it, it's not actually going to make a difference beyond the grave. I want something that I need something that's going to pull me through eternity, not just through this life. And that's when I surrendered to Jesus Christ, was born again, became a born again Christian. And, as I say, we don't have time to go into it, but pretty much all of my family in very short succession, even my sister who was living thousands of miles away in another country, same thing happened to all of them in a very short period of time. And that has absolutely changed the direction of my life 180 degrees.
Yeah, that's an amazing story. And I actually I know we don't have all the time to go through the story, but
sure.
I know you mentioned, so you said 5 years ago, so around 2020, around COVID times?
Just shortly after. Actually.
After.
Yeah.
Okay. So would you say you got to a point where you had all the materialistic success. You had everything that you had dreamed of having, the freedom, everything that came with the luxuries of trading and business, but you still didn't feel fulfilled inside? Was it
For
that
sure.
kind of thing?
For sure. I mean, that is a pretty accurate, you're kind of getting there. But growing up as a teenager, I didn't have all of the things. I went to school in, a slightly better area than where I was from. And people were getting, dropped off at school in Range Rovers, and people had, £2 million houses and all the rest of it. And I'm living in a semi-detached council house, and I saw all of this wealth and stuff around me. And equally, I saw all of the pain and the struggles that my parents went through, financially. My parents done an incredible job, raising myself and my sisters. There's just two of us. They done an incredible job. My dad's an extremely hardworking man. He's a builder to trade. He'd had a great job. He gave it up because it was coming into conflict with the family, and he didn't want to make family sacrifices to pursue his career. So he went on his own as a builder, and they incurred debts and loans and everything just to sustain the family. They made a lot of really tough decisions and a lot of sacrifices just to give us a relatively decent standard of life. But growing up, I began to idolize, the comfort of money and that kind of luxury and stuff that I saw in other people. And so when I started off in trading, and I started a business which was totally separate from trading and manufacturing company, I was running that in my parents' bedroom when I was like 16, 17 years old, and started to make good money. And it really became an idol to me. It was something I very much served. And I believed that at some point, if I serve this long enough, at some point it's going to start serving me. And I thought the way in which it would serve me would be getting the, nice car, getting the house, getting all of these, watches, whatever it may be. And once I had all of those things, and people would say to me, "You have a great life," all the rest of it, I was like, yeah, I mean, there's still something missing here. So yeah, there is no fulfillment. I mean, look, having money and being able to do great experiences and holidays and being able to financially bless people around you, it's amazing, I wouldn't say, go and be poor or anything like that. I think having access to resources is just, it's pretty much essential in the day and age that we live in, with the way the macroeconomic landscape's panning out. But if you're trying to find fulfillment and satisfaction and joy and peace in it, you're not going to find it. You're not going to find it there.
Yeah. It's essentially, you just be burning through the money looking for something that you can't buy.
For sure.
And
For
it's
sure,
just
100%.
an endless hamster wheel, isn't it? It's quite... I love the fact that you brought that up, because I think that's where, particularly in trading, everyone comes into it for the money. Money's the end goal, per se. And then they get the money, and then they're like... Of course, their life will change. They'll be able to help their family and whatnot. But you will get to that point where now you've helped everyone. Life is quote unquote good, but something is still missing.
For sure.
And no matter how many, all the materialistic stuff that we buy, once it's our time to go, none of it is going to come with us. In 100 years, 200 years, no one will barely remember our name. So
that's right.
What are we doing it for? What are we really after? And it would be good if a lot of people thought about this beforehand rather than just chasing the money. It's a whole package. You need to, I don't know how to say it, but it's like, have an overview of what you're trying to get.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, look, so if the grid went down, right now, everyone would feel it, right? But you go out onto the street, unfortunately, the majority of people do not know who discovered electricity. The majority of people don't know who invented the telephone. The majority of people don't know who were at the forefront of all of these technological developments. And so, yeah, you can build a legacy and all the rest of it. Ultimately, that will fade. It'll fade with time. There has to be something bigger. There has to be something beyond this, because time is fleeting, and you can't get it back either. That's not to say I would change any of what happened and that sequence of events that led me up to, being born again, and even to where I am now. Made many mistakes, but it all had a purpose, and it shaped who I am today ultimately.
Yeah. And would you say when you became a born again Christian that you noticed any difference in, for example, the way you trade in the way you did business and so forth?
100%. I mean, it's so easy in business and trading, whatever, to feel like, well, I'm my own boss. I have this autonomy, all the rest of it. As a Christian, there's a massive principle of stewardship. My trading account, the money in my bank account, all of that, I am a steward of, right? So it ultimately does not belong to me. I am given it to be a steward of, to see how I will use that. And just as it's been given, if I'm a poor steward of that, I believe that can be taken away. And in many cases for people it is, if they're a poor steward with their money, even with their time, etc. So that stewardship principle is massive. I need to be a good steward with my trading and with the funds and the resources that I have. And so every trade I take, every decision I make in the markets, it's not just like, well, that was a bad decision, I write it down in my journal. I have failed in my stewardship there. If I'm revenge trading, if I'm doing all these things. So yeah, absolutely. A big part of being a Christian is it's not just, that's what we touched on a little bit earlier. It's not just, you live your Sunday or your Saturday, whenever it is, for God, and then the rest of your life's yours. Everything you do has to be for His glory. And ultimately that involves my trading and business as well. I pray over my trading performance. I pray over my students' trading performance. Pray over my students when we bring students on board. I'm very, very prayerful over these things, and I see the effect of it.
No, that's deep. That's heavy. Because I think out of everyone I've spoken to, I don't think I've actually spoken to anyone who has mentioned the importance of religion and their relationship with God when it comes to their trading. And I would imagine it will have a massively positive impact on it. But I think it's just something that's not spoken about enough. So yeah, thank you very much for sharing that. Now to go back a little bit to before you started trading, before any business, when you were still very, very young, who was Sam KB growing up? By the way, do you prefer being called Sam?
You can call me whatever you want. You can call me Dan if you want. Like I'm I know who you're talking. There's only two of us in the room, right? I'm incredibly polite. You call me whatever you want. I'm not going to react.
I'll go with Sam.
So I mean, growing up, I was pretty much like any other young boy. I was extremely adventurous growing up. My parents tried to keep us away from like the internet and stuff as much as possible. We didn't have phones until we were like maybe 12, 13, which some people are in their 40s watching this are going to be like, yeah, phones didn't exist when I was 12, 13. But a lot of people around us had exposure to Sky and, phones and all the rest of it. And my parents, they didn't necessarily have the money to be able to provide us these things, but they also wanted to kind of shield and protect us where they could. And what that meant is growing up, even into my early teenage years, I was always outdoors. I was out on my bike or, I was out, digging in the mud, throwing rocks at stuff, whatever, young guys do. And so I was quite adventurous, and I always have been that way. But I was also very, very resourceful. I loved to build things. I loved to invent things. I loved to dream up of ideas and try and see them materialize. And the kind of culmination of that was in my first business, which I started when I was about 16. And this is so random, but I began producing radio antennas. Yeah.
Okay. Radio antennas?
Yeah. So I invented an antenna system for like walkie-talkie type radios.
Oh.
Now,
That's very interesting.
To cut a very long story short, this, like a tape measure, steel, yellow, got the measurements on it, builders, carpenters use them. Well, my dad had an old one lying around and I had walkie-talkies and stuff like that. And I basically developed an antenna out of this steel blade. And, you'd sand it down and solder in the radio connections. Again, I was very, I love to do all this kind of stuff. And I developed an antenna system, which I had posted in some Facebook groups, and all of a sudden I had people, wanting to buy them. And that very quickly spiraled into what was a business that serviced action sports hobbies. So like paintball, airsoft, even some private military contractors, even some military personnel for application in, radio communication overseas and even in domestically. Now, again, I'm 16, 17. I was in college at this time studying to be an architect. So I had access to a lot of design softwares that cost thousands of pounds per year. I got them for free. And I used those to basically generate designs, to create designs, got in touch with a factory in China and had them start producing some of these designs that I'd put together. And I was selling them to both civilian, private military, and some of the military market. Sent, some over to US Air Force bases and that kind of thing as well. And so, you can still find that Instagram. It's tactical_comms_solutions. It wasn't a huge business, it didn't make millions or anything like that, but I made tens and tens of thousands of pounds, in a very short period of time as a young man. And then eventually I got cut out of the market by China, So that was really the culmination of that kind of resourcefulness and inventor type thing that I had as a young guy.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's like super creative. But what made you want to create antennas though?
So I had been using radios. I played a little bit of paintball, I played a little bit of airsoft and that type of thing when I was a young guy. And communication capabilities, because of civilian radios, that you see like in the shopping malls, whatever, all the security guards have their radios on. They're communicating over like a few hundred meters, really, inside shops and that type of thing. But as soon as you want to stretch that out over a couple of kilometers or something like that, your capabilities are severely limited. And some of that's to do with the power output of the radio. Again, I don't want to get too technical into this stuff, but the power output of the radio is limited for the civilian market. But antenna systems are also a bit of a hindrance to that. And I took inspiration from some of the antennas that the military used that we can't really get as civilians. And I developed something that filled in that gap in the market.
Oh, that is so unique. Like,
it's so random, isn't it?
It's so very random, but it's very creative because I'd imagine there's so many different parts that you need to put together and just the research that you need to do.
It's a lot more simple and a lot less technical than you would believe.
Is it?
I mean, if you had a radio like a walkie-talkie here and you grab me a roll of tinfoil, I can make you an antenna that'll, it's not going to be great. It will damage the radio over time, but because it's not properly insulated and stuff, but you can transmit. I mean, I remember a time where you could, I would even see people do this, coat hanger in the back of the TV in the aerial socket, stuff like that. When it comes to sound transmission and transmission and all the rest of it, and even receiving, it's actually a lot more simple than you think.
I think I'm going to check it out after, you've made me very intrigued.
It is an interesting field, right?
That is pretty cool, especially if you want to have one up when you're paintballing or airsoft. That might be quite handy, to be fair.
Yeah.
I do love a bit of airsoft.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm guessing money started flowing in. So did that kind of show to you the possibilities in life? Like you can make money out of anything?
That's when I became a capitalist for sure.
Yeah.
I was convinced of capitalism. I was like, oh my goodness, capitalism's real. And then when I got my first tax bill, I was like, now I'm conservative. Yeah. I'm not only capitalist, I'm now conservative, But this was all the stuff I had to go through at 16, 17 and having to deal with accountants and HMRC and, registering companies and all the rest of it. It was a great elementary school for going on further in business and stuff like that. So, I mean, it was just great to come up against all those things and being able to develop solutions like that, being able to overcome things, even, customer problems, having to replace things and all the rest of it. These are all skills that learning at such a young age was just excellent.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And then, so how did that transcend into trading then? When you were doing that antenna, did you just stumble across a video or one of your friends?
No, so I left school just when I turned 16. I left school early. I had been trading already.
Okay.
So I opened a trading 212 account when I was 15 years old. I had a demo account and I still have the email. Sometimes I post it on Twitter every so often.
Yeah.
Someone will go, you can't have been trading for 10 years. It's illegal to trade under 18 years old. I managed to open a live trading account at 15 years old.
How?
With a fake driving license.
Got it.
Right. We're not going to say too much more on that, right? But if you scroll on my Twitter or if you type in trading 212 on my Twitter, it will come up, the email confirmation. But they had advertised a free £10,000 account. Now, I didn't know it was demo at the time, but I downloaded the app and I thought, oh my goodness, they just give you money to trade with. And so I very quickly realized, okay, this is fake money, whatever. And, but that was the primer, getting that taste of, oh my goodness, I've got 10 grand in this account and I can trade stocks. And people at the lunch table are like, oh, you trade stocks now and all the rest of it. And it's a bit clout, right?
Yeah, of course, of course.
You think, my goodness, I'm that mysterious guy that's got 10 grand, trading.
Mint in the market.
Yeah. So that really whet my appetite for trading. It really did. And seeing how like the intrigue around it, that's just fuel to the fire for a young guy, right? That was always in the background. Although it took a back seat when I was in college and when I was running TCS, my communications manufacturing company. And the guy who sat next to me in college, a little bit older than me, I had seen signals groups and stuff come up. This is really early on. And he kind of said, look, I wouldn't bother with that stuff. That's probably not real. And I tried it anyway and lost loads of money. And that was like where I really started to get an appetite for it, was when I was seeing other people trading, and although most of that was fake, I mean, I'd say 95% of what you see online is fake. These guys talking about making money and stuff. But that was enough. I thought, even if it's not real, if they can pretend to do it, they must be pretending to do something that is real. And that was something that I just got into the books and I studied and I used, I think it's Baby Pips.
Yeah, Baby Pips.
Baby Pips. I went through that full thing. I took pages and pages, and I found a mentor. He taught me swing trading. I moved on to a chap from London, Tom Dante, who's been just a good friend to me, but more than that, a mentor. And he is absolutely, he's one of the most experienced traders I know and have ever had the opportunity to work with. And he very much took me under his wing, and in a great sense, I still am under his wing. And as I say, when I mentioned earlier, right place, right time, and being in the path of opportunity, and from now looking back, I say, well, look, that's God ordained. That was all by design, and nothing happens by accident. My pastor says God incidences rather than coincidences.
Love that.
Yeah,
that's cool. That's a good one.
I love that too. But that's really where my where things took off. Maybe 2017, 2018, where it really started to become a central focus.
Yeah, I think Signals was kind of a similar not introduction, but in a sense of, wow, people can actually make this amount of money. And I joined a few Signal groups in my early days. I don't know if you remember, he was very famous back then, Elijah. He was on BBC with like a gold Lamborghini talking about his trading.
No, I don't.
He was like the best thing to ever come out of trading.
I'm going to be honest, right? Like I miss now obviously all these people were total charlatans and fakes, but I miss the old gurus that were there, posting all this super cheesy stuff. Like, they didn't dress well. They're wearing like any Versace top. They just go into the store and any Versace top off the rack, and they've got like blue Gucci trainers on or something like that. And they just dressed atrocious. Big gold watches didn't even fit them, and flexing with cash and all this. And it was so cheesy. But I mean, I look back on it with fond memories, and I'm like, they're like actual gurus. You could spot them.
Yeah.
Nowadays they're like, they're sharp, they're well dressed, they've got some of the lingo, they're super handsome and all the rest of it, in shape, and you're just like, my God, the guru is evolving.
Yeah. They're ticking all the boxes that you would associate with an actual trader.
Yeah, 100%.
I was actually having this discussion last week with two other traders who said something similar. 90% of the successful trader you see out there are not actually doing what they're talking about. So, and I put a question to them: how do you spot someone real to someone who's fake? How would you spot someone who's real versus who's fake? Because they can fake it well nowadays.
There's a million ways, there's a million ways. But the more time you spend in this industry, the quicker you are able to discern not just if someone's fake, but also someone's capacity to be able to trade. I'm even talking about when I'm interviewing students. We currently work on application interview only basis. I don't feel comfortable just opening the doors and bringing on hundreds of people and 90 odd percent of them are not making it, because no matter how good the education is, if it's not the right kind of people,
Yeah.
and they're just there for the money and stuff like that, it's very, very difficult to get that person over the line, even following a very regimented mechanical system, whatever. So I have developed that ability to be able to spot, is this someone who I think has potential? I don't get it right 100% of the time, but having knowledge and experience in the markets, you just know. You can just you just get that little scent, and but there are things that you can look at. The people are super flexing about, all the material stuff that they've got. It's obviously not a great sign. I don't like people who hide their lot sizes. I think that's always, now look, I'm stepping on anyone's toes or insulting anyone in the
I've got a video in mind, but yeah.
The problem with hiding lot sizes is, so I follow traders on Twitter, just a handful.
Yeah.
Most of them don't have a lot of followers. Most of them are like, male pattern baldness and, bad backs and are out of shape and smoke 20 a day. The real deal.
Yeah.
And over time, whenever they do post trades, you can see, okay, 3 years ago he was, slinging a 20 lot. Now he's, clipping 60, 70, 80. You can see progression. And when someone's hiding lot sizes, I'm like, it's almost such an insignificant thing to hide. Why are you hiding it? And that, I don't see it so much anymore because everyone's trading on funded accounts and the lot sizes look big and all the rest of it. But that would be one of them. There is a whole host of things. Usually the lingo, the way they speak, people talking about super high strike rates, people discrediting lower end strike rates, 40, 50%, which we know is,
Great.
You can be absolutely exceptionally profitable. You can have a positive expectancy, a great profit factor, with a 45% strike rate. So these guys talk about 90% hit rates and all the rest of it. People who talk about, and again, I know I'm stepping on toes here for sure, but for me, it's a red flag when someone says they trade one time frame exclusively. They don't look at any other time frame. They trade one pair on one time frame.
Yeah.
That to me is not a great sign either. Market executing is another big thing. Not a lot of people understand this. When you market execute, you are taking liquidity. You are not providing liquidity. When you are getting in via orders, limit orders, if you're, let's say you're bid below market, limit order, you're offered above market, again, sell limit, you're providing liquidity to the market.
Yeah.
When we're market executing, we're taking liquidity from the markets. It's always going to be less preferential in execution. Things like slippage and that type of thing come into play. So there's a lot of little things where it's not necessarily an indication that someone's fake, but it's an indication that they're maybe not quite as experienced as they might seem on the surface. So there's just all these little things where I can't say for sure that person doesn't make money, but I can say, yeah, maybe not as experienced as he looks on the surface.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. It is really difficult, and I reckon it will continue to get more and more difficult, but it's just more so for new traders. Be careful where you put your money or invest your money and time as well, and energy, because that can, if you have a bad experience, it can put you off something that could be potentially very beneficial for you and your family.
I think that's true. But something also to remember, I can think of people who I am about 90% sure that they're not good traders, but I wouldn't consume their content personally. But if someone tells me, oh, I'm watching so-and-so's videos, I'm not going to tell them, oh, don't watch his videos, I don't think he's profitable, because maybe when I have watched his content in the past, I've thought he's pretty engaging and some of the stuff he's saying here is actually useful information. So some people can be great teachers. They're just not necessarily able to do it themselves. I think a good mentor, and I think this is where a teacher and a mentor are separate. A teacher is someone who can impart knowledge to you. A mentor is someone who can bring you along on the journey. And those two things are very distinct. A mentor is exclusively, or a teacher is exclusively speaking to your mind and giving you that knowledge, that your knowledge might grow, and it's important to have that knowledge. But a mentor is someone who is really able to take you by the hand, put an arm around you and say, walk in the steps that I've walked in. I think when you're a beginner, teachers are fine. There comes a point where you need a mentor. You need someone who has trodden that path so that you can follow in their footsteps. And so I would say when you're a total beginner, you don't have to be super wary about the people that you're listening to, because most people can impart general knowledge to you,
Yeah.
and it's useful, and they know more than you do at this time. I mean, I think back to when I first started getting serious about trading, I was teaching all of my mates who wanted to hear. And I wasn't able to mentor them, but I was able to teach them because I had that slight knowledge gap above them. But it comes to a point where you need to graduate from teachers to mentors. And that's where a mentor has to be someone who verifiably does it.
Yeah.
You know, it can't just be he knows some stuff. He
He
needs
has
to
to
be
be
able to not just talk the talk, he needs to be able
walk
to
the
walk the
walk.
walk.
Yeah, that's a good point. And at what point for you did you feel like, okay, now it's time for me to get a mentor? Is it, because I'd imagine when getting a mentor, let's say you're doing pretty well, just like listening to advices from teachers, and you make the step to having a mentor, would the mentor need to, or in fact, shall I say, is it a psychological mentor or is it like like from a technological standpoint, in the sense of, because if they have a different strategy, it's kind of like starting from zero again. And if you've been having some success with a different strategy and then you get a mentor who teaches you a different way, is that like causing more harm than good kind of thing?
So there's a lot to unpack there. I think there's really two answers that I could give there. If you have something that's working, and if you have something that's working and you have the data on it, all the rest of it, you don't actually need a mentor.
Okay.
If you have something that works, all you need to be thinking about is, first of all, is this robust? Robustness, you know, to a very basic term, is this something that has a high mathematical probability of continuing to work long-term in different market and macroeconomic regimes? There's a million tests you can do for robustness, depending on if your strategy is technical, if it's statistical, whatever. But if you have something that's working, I'd be first looking to see, is this robust? Is there a high mathematical probability this is going to continue to work long-term? And then what I'd be looking for is, how can I scale the capital that I'm putting into this to yield a greater return? People often, to get a greater return, they're trying to up their trade frequency. They're trying to, you know, just up their risk. They're trying to, you know, increase the number of setups that they're looking for, or drop the time frame or whatever. It's the complete wrong way to do it. If you have something that works, the way you start making more money from it is not by making changes to your actual trading practice or the strategy that works. If you have something that works, you need to preserve that. The way you increase the money that you're making is you increase the money that you're trading. And that's really where funding comes in, right? So that's part one. Part two, really mentors are for people who they understand how to trade. They have that knowledge that they've got from teachers and stuff. They're struggling to get the pieces to fit together now.
Okay.
That's where a mentor comes in. Now, you mentioned psychology mentors. I don't happen to believe in trading psychology.
That's what I wanted to ask you today, because
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of your videos on YouTube saying trading psychology doesn't exist. What does that mean?
Okay,
'Cause
so
Yeah.
that is a little bit of a clickbaity.
Yeah.
I wouldn't just run around saying trading psychology doesn't exist, although I have put in a YouTube, you know, title before. There are types of trading where psychology is absolutely essential.
Okay.
Now, I can think of, I have friends you may be familiar with, you know, and if not, some of the audience will. Axia Futures, they're a futures trading firm. They are trading almost exclusively on the DOM, the depth of market, on the price ladder, footprints, market profiles. They're not really trading candlesticks all that much. Their frequency of trade, a little bit higher. They are in and out of positions very, very quickly. They are almost maybe 60% of their trading is macroeconomic events, PPI, CPI, you know, PCE, NFP, you know, vaccine comments, if we're to go back to, you know, the pandemic and stuff like that. So they absolutely need psychology, because they are like split second reacting to things getting in and out of trade, taking a huge loss, having to get back in, you know, all that kind of stuff. Psychology is so important. These guys, you know, do breath work. These guys do all the kind of psychology things that you would think about. When we move into slightly longer term CFD trading. You're looking at a couple of setups, couple of strategies, handful of different financial instruments, your trade durations. You're not under that super intense pressure. You don't need trading psychology. What you need is solid strategy and discipline. And people say, oh, well, discipline is trading psychology. It's not. The kind of example I would give you, and it's one that my mentor gave to me, he said, imagine you go and you're a door-to-door salesman. Now, it might not have been a car salesman or something, but imagine you're a door-to-door salesman and it's your first day on the job, and you knock on the first door and, they open the door and slam it in your face. You go to the next door and, you start pitching and they shut the door. And the third door, they lead you on for ages and they say, nah, I'm not interested, and shut the door. You're going to be starting to feel pretty demotivated, right? Now, what is your job? Your job is to go door to door and to sell. You go to your area manager or whatever and say, I'm struggling here. He's not going to hand you a self-help book. He's going to say, we've given you the process. We've given you the script. Go out and knock the doors. Eventually, someone's going to buy.
Yeah.
And trading is just like that. It's a numbers game. If you have a strategy that works, and the reason most people struggle is they don't have any historical evidence that their strategy works. So they have a lack of confidence. We have things like lack of confidence, lack of motivation, struggling with some of these emotional things. These are not the problem. These are the symptoms, right? And what we have to do is we follow those symptoms back to the root to find the issue. If I go to the doctor and I say I've got a headache, a bad doctor is going to give me paracetamol. A good doctor is going to send me to the opticians. He's going to say, well, I'm not going to treat the symptom. We need to work out what's causing this. And so many traders are trying to treat the symptoms and, okay, I've gotten over my lack of confidence, but now I'm struggling with, lack of motivation. Okay, I've gotten over that. And all of a sudden, they're going through all these things chasing their tail. What's the root cause? The majority of the time, it's because they don't have any evidence to suggest that their strategy should work and will continue to work. I ask if they come to me and say, I've had 6 losers in a row. I say, so what? What's the maximum number of losers your strategy has had in a row over the past 10 years? Oh, I don't know. Well, maybe you should go and find that out. Oh, okay, so you find out that on average, your largest losing streak is 6 losers in a row. Okay, well, it's probably going to turn around pretty soon. Add a 20% tolerance for human error. But when you have that data underneath you, you go, I've taken 4 losers in a row. My worst losing streak ever was 10. So until we get 50% beyond that, I'm not going to start sweating about anything. So that's where I think trading psychology, there is an element of it that's absolutely true, but what's typically branded as trading psychology is not true. And this comes from someone who spent literally thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds with a trading psychologist. Early in my professional career when I was running the trading floor, Steve Ward, he's basically the British Mark Douglas. He's excellent, worked with banks, hedge funds, all the rest of it. And I was going through a tough drawdown and he was there to try and help me stabilize. And he gave me some excellent tools, but he wouldn't disagree with anything that I've just said. And that's his job, is to be as a trading psychologist. So there is an element of it that's true. Majority of what people are portraying as trading psychology is not real.
That's a great point. I think getting to the root cause, you're right, because all of the things that people typically struggle with, if you actually analyze what the issues are, it always leads back to one thing. They don't have proof that what they're trading works.
For sure.
So why should they have the confidence? Why should they have the mental stability to continue trading, not knowing the outcome? So
that's exactly right. And look, you need confidence to trade well. You absolutely do. But you also need to, for many people, they need to trade well to have confidence. And that's what they're waiting on, is they're waiting for good performance to get confident. But what they need to do is they need to be confident before that performance comes. And the way you get that confidence before you're performing well is to have that evidence.
And would that usually just be done through back testing? Forward testing?
This is a whole nother can of worms. Back testing, again, is something that is so often we hear that kind of term thrown about, and most people think back testing is scrolling back on the chart, 300 bars and, playing through and putting on the, risk to reward tool and going, okay, that one worked, great. And, that one lost and great. That really is just playing through a strategy on historical data. That's all that is. It's just trading on old data is all that is. Back testing is much more analytical. It involves a lot of spreadsheets and number crunching and stuff like that. That's the reality of trading. Most people don't want to hear that. That's the legwork that goes into it. I have students who don't have a lot of time for data and testing, and so they trade some of the systems that I've built in the past. But then I have other students, and they tend to be the ones who do the best, who are really into the data, and they'll go and build systems and develop mine and all the rest of it. And they'll say, do you realize, this stat? And I'm like, I never even saw that before in my entire life.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, this specific thing that you do in your strategy, why do you do it? And I'm like, because through testing, that's what worked out best. And he's like, here is the statistical reason that works.
That's
and
really
I'm like,
cool. Yeah. And so in terms of like when it comes to spreadsheets, so how would one build out like a spreadsheet regarding the previous like 3, 4, 5 years worth of data? How you just track, like you'd go on the chart, you say, oh, this is my A+ setup, this is what it would look like, see if it comes in, and you just prop everything onto the spreadsheet.
Yeah, I mean, you can't test anything unless you have rules. And this is another mistake that people make. They trade something that's highly discretionary. When I was running the trading floor, I would have traders in the morning, they would produce a morning plan for me. Some of them would write that down physically. Some of them would put it into I had a template that they would fill out, on Word or on Excel or something. Morning plan, all the markets that you trade, the levels that you're looking to trade at, what you're looking to do long, short, when you would get out the trade, if you get in that trade, when will be your exit point, what do you have to see, etc. And it would blow your mind the amount of people who at the end of the day, I'd be like, Timmy, there's no one called Timmy, but Timmy, that euro dollar long was just absolutely eye-watering. I can't believe you called the bottom, blah, blah, blah. Like, how much did you make? And they're like,
nothing.
I didn't take it. Because why? They're trading on discretion. They know what they're looking for, but then when it happens, they're having this decision, I'm not going to take that one because of X, Y, and Z. And it's like, none of that was even in your plan. So why are you even implementing it now? So when we test, have something that's rigid and rules-based. And what that's going to do is it's going to provide you a baseline framework. Okay, you might not totally agree with all those rules. You might say, but in some situations I would do this or that. Just test the rule set. And if you find over an extended period of time that it makes money, well, why implement any filters on top, any discretion on top of this, and potentially bring more variables in that could produce a result that's dislocated from your testing? Why not just do the thing that has worked in the past, following it line by line? So once you have that, then you can go and identify those setups, and when they happen in future, there's no ifs or buts. You just take them. And I would be tracking things like, entry time, exit time, direction, stop size, not in pips or ticks, but with reference to the daily ATR.
Okay.
Because pips is such a subjective thing. I hear people say, I trade with a 20 pip stop. And I'm like, okay, in what market condition? Just all the time. Right? So, the ATR on Eurodollar was 80 pips in 2019. And in 2021, the ATR on Eurodollar, or 2022, the ATR on Eurodollar is 120. So you're trading with a stop that's quarter of ATR then, and is a sixth of ATR 3 years later. So in terms of relative to how much the market could potentially move in that day, that's a massive variable. Why are you doing that? So stop relative to ATR, target relative to ATR. I would also be looking at, if it's a specific setup that you trade, the range of that setup with reference to ATR. Let's say it's a head and shoulders, not something I personally trade, but let's say it was, just to go super basic, and it's 100 pips from the head to the neckline. If ATR that day is 200 pips, okay, that's 0.5 of ATR. You want as much data as possible. Maximum adverse excursion, maximum favorable excursion. I'd be tracking the profit factor, the expectancy. We can look at, Sortino and Sharpe ratios and all the rest of it. It's probably a bit too overkill for just building a strategy initially, but these are all the things I'd be looking at.
Yeah. So a lot goes into it.
For sure. And look, we live in the age of AI and automation and that type of thing.
I was just about to ask you, yeah.
Whack open, ChatGPT
I was
Plus
just-
and
yeah.
ask it to build you a script to go and test the blinking thing. If you can explain it, your strategy should be, and I always say this, my daughter's only 18 months old, right? So I can't explain anything about trading to her.
Yeah.
I can't explain anything to her really, but when she's 8, 9, 10 years old, my strategy should be clear enough that I can explain it to her. And if she was able to operate the trading platform, she'd be able to execute it.
Yeah.
Trading is not easy, but it should be straightforward. It should be simple in terms of our execution. It's never going to be easy, but the process should be straightforward. So yeah, that's something I would say is simple tends to be better.
Yeah.
The broader a rule set is, the less, super tight and detailed and, when this and this happens and then it's a full moon and, the EMA's here and the ATR is this much. When you start adding all these things, you have so many, it's like balancing plates on top of each other, right? Or even Jenga, the more filters you put up, the higher chance
Gets
the
wobbly.
slightest breeze is just going to collapse things. So you want something that's broad, it's got a wide base, it's not too tall, not too many filters, and that tends to last. It's not going to make millions every year. It's not going to make a 500% a year.
Yeah.
It'll probably have a conservative 30 to 50%, but it's something that is going to work long term, and that's really what we're looking for. We're looking for longevity, right?
Yeah, 100%. And even 30 to 50% is incredible. I think that's often one thing that people get wrong is they expect these crazy returns because of the stuff they see online. Like the other day I saw a video where someone went from, I'm pretty sure it was £100 to 10K at the end of the first year, and then
It's hilarious, isn't it?
10K to like 2.5 million in the following year. And I'm just like, what kind of image are you trying to portray? £100 to 2.5 million in the space of 24 months from trading is not trading. Like, I wouldn't classify that as trading. I know it's possible technically, but it's just like the risk you need to take to achieve that is bonkers.
It's fun and let the kids have their fun at the end of the day, but does it give off a good example? No. And I think that's something that we always need to be conscious of. If we have any amount of influence, I mean, everyone has some amount of influence, right? We need to be careful, how we influence people, because someone sees that and they chuck their last 100 quid into an account trying to flip it. It's just not great.
Yeah, 100%. And touching on your time, like working on the trading floors, how was that experience? That must have been incredible.
Yeah. So bear in mind, this kind of kicked off before I was a Christian. So, I mean, it did get pretty crazy at times. During working hours, it was very professional. Albeit, I was a very, very prideful, very, very harsh guy. I would shout and swear at people and stuff like that. I wasn't a nice person, certainly looking back kind of makes me cringe. But during working hours, we were locked in, and we traded well and we followed our rules and that type of thing. But, after hours, sometimes things did get a little bit crazy, parties and whatever. But it was an amazing experience to be in that environment where everyone's there for the same reason. Everyone's at different stages in their journey. Everyone's there to motivate each other. But the crazy thing is, there's also a massive amount of competitiveness. I mean, I would see best friends that are on the other side of each other's trade and like preying on the downfall of the guy sitting next to them, And it's kind of, funny in some senses. It's kind of sad in others.
Yeah,
but
a bit.
It was great though. It was great. We used to do lots of different trading drills. So we would do, like, on Wednesdays, we would do education. I would chuck on some of the old school trading documentaries, $1 Million Traders with Anton Creel and Lex Van Dam. And there were some other ones from, back, like pit trading documentaries and that type of thing. So we used to watch a lot of this stuff. I really wanted to culture these guys and educate them on the history of trading, because that was all stuff that I had a lot of exposure to through my mentor. He came from the early days of point and click trading, where trading had just moved on to computers, digital, and probably about within 5 years of him becoming a professional trader. So I had a bit of exposure to all this stuff, and I knew a lot of this lingo and the way they approach things, and I wanted to really impart some of that to these guys. So we'd do that on Wednesdays, either on Mondays or Thursdays, I can't remember. We would do specific education where I would take them through different developments and strategies. We had a big, electronic whiteboard that you could draw on and stuff. We would do at the end of each week, every single person would have to stand up and present every single trade they take in that week, no matter how long it took. Sometimes that took, 4 or 5 hours. We would order in pizza, we would get out some beers, and every single person in that office would stay until they had presented every trade they'd taken with full justification for why they got in, why they exited, all the rest of it. And people would give feedback, ask questions. So that was awesome. We would also do trading drills. One of my favorites, up on the whiteboard, I might write down 10 instruments, because we had 10 juniors at this time and 4 senior guys. And I would get each one of them to pick, euro, dollar, gold, copper, whatever it may be. And heads for long, tails for short, flip a coin for each person. Okay, so they would have to execute whatever the coin landed on. They'd have to execute at their normal size in that market that they had chosen, long or short. And they weren't allowed to touch the trade for an hour. No putting stops in, no putting targets in, none of that.
Oh, wow.
Now, they had an hour to analyze the market. They had an hour to analyze all the macroeconomic stuff. And at the end of the hour, they could either choose to hold the trade, take something off the table, or they could choose to exit the trade. If they're holding the trade, they can now put in stops, they can put in targets, they've calculated all their risk out, and they would have until the end of the day to, manage their way out of that trade or whatever. You might have guys who at the end of the hour, they're down $500, let's say, and they say, I'm just going to scrap it here. And by the end of the day, it's run to, minus 4K or something. And you go, well, that was a good decision. Now justify it. You might have guys who, they take a little bit of profit, and by the end of the day, they would have been up 5-10K. So the whole process, the whole reasoning behind that drill was to show the importance of trade management. Often people get so hung up on getting a perfect entry. Entry is only a very small part of the trade. And people are so focused on getting that perfect entry, and they neglect what comes after. And it's what comes after that determines your profitability. It's not clicking the mouse to get in. It's how you get out of that trade. What does it look like when you get out of that trade? So I really wanted them to deal with the pressure of having to analyze that market under pressure, having to analyze the macro situation under pressure, having to make that decision bang on the hour. And then if they held the trade, getting them to see real time, the markets at the end of the day really are 50-50. It's going to go up or it's going to go down. How you manage the trade is pretty much the be all end all.
Yeah.
And so that was just one of a number of different drills that we would do that were fun. And, all the senior guys are looking over, at the junior desk to see how they would get on. And, it was some fond memories for sure.
That sounds wicked. I'm not going to lie. That sounds absolutely cool. And I imagine that must have been very rewarding just seeing people's progress over time, isn't it?
For sure. And, you say something and, a junior guy goes, why? And you go, I actually don't know. I've never thought about that before. And being in that, you get that kind of hive mind thing where you're all working together and you're just bouncing off each other. It's excellent. I've learned so much from traders with almost no experience.
Yeah. That's wicked. And how long were you doing the trading floors for?
We opened our first office, not a trading floor, just me and, my business partner, Callum. That was probably just before COVID kicked off. Okay. So that was, I don't know, end of 2019, start of 2020, something like that. We had the trading floor until about 2023. So three years and a little bit. And then, everyone wants to work from home and all the rest of it. So it kind of fizzled out quite naturally. But we all kind of moved on from that. And it's something I would definitely, think about revisiting at some point. But fond memories for sure, even in just that short period of time.
Yeah, no, that is incredible. I've always been fascinated by trading floors. It's just being around people with the same exact mindset, wanting to improve and get better. And then have access to the mentorship you've always wanted. It's just like the perfect environment to really grow into the trader that you're aspiring to be. So yeah, I can imagine the value that they would have received would have been through the roof. It just would have been
100%.
incredible.
Some of these guys made lifelong friends.
Yeah, that too.
We had guys move over from Ireland to Scotland. We had guys move up from England, sell everything and sleeping in their car and all the rest of it. So, it's people put a lot on the line to come and to be involved there, and it's awesome.
Yeah, because trading is very lonely, isn't it? I feel like for the majority of people, it's just you in your bedroom or your office or whatever with your laptop, just analyzing charts. God knows how many hours in a day, and it's just sometimes, even if you have like a statistical edge on a losing streak, sometimes it's always good to have someone you're able to speak to and just say, "Hey, I'm going through some drawdown. It's tough right now." It's just, how would you go about in this day and age finding like a community of people, because it likely won't be your friends that are also interested in trading?
Mm-hmm. So this taps into something again. That I would say, I think speak about trading as little as possible to people in your life who are not interested in the markets.
Okay.
There is only one thing that they can do, and it's pour cold water on you. That is my experience. There are exceptions. If you have people in your life that are genuinely interested in your trading that don't trade themselves, more power to you. That's great. Praise God for that. That's amazing.
Yeah.
But in general, most people, it's over their heads. It's boring to them. It's not something that makes a lot of sense to them. If you're talking about great wins, they don't really get it. They maybe think you got lucky or you're gambling. If you're going through a bad period, they kind of think you're an idiot anyway. So I would say finding people who are genuinely interested in what you do and who do it themselves is great. One of the best ways to do that is, if you're find a solid mentor. Good traders tend to flock to solid mentors, so that's the easiest way to find it. But I mean, there's Twitter and there's forums and Facebook groups and Reddit threads and all the rest of it. I don't use most of that stuff, but if you're looking for it, you'll find it. Trading is becoming increasingly more popular. I think it's not hard for men to find other men that are interested in finance. The hardest place to be looking for that is to be a woman, because women are extremely underrepresented in finance, and that's a personal choice matter. Most women aren't interested in finance. It's not like brokers don't allow women to open trading accounts or anything like that. It's not an equality of opportunity problem. It's just women don't gravitate towards that. But women are the fastest growing demographic in trading right now.
Oh yeah.
So if you are a woman and you're listening to this and you feel isolated and all the rest of it, put the feelers out. There's hundreds of other women, thousands of other women in your exact position, feel like, the only fish in the pond type of thing. And they're desperately looking for other women to surround themselves with.
Yeah, that's a good shout. So put the tweet out there.
Yeah,
Just
100%.
see who's interested, because you never know. Oh, that's a great idea. I never knew that as well. That's really cool.
Yeah. And they also tend to make better traders.
I've heard that too.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
So, and again, this is going to be super controversial. It shouldn't be, but women do tend to be more emotional creatures than men. And I believe that's God-given. It's what makes them nurturing. It's what makes them feminine. It's what, it's everything we love about a woman, right? Is that kind of softness, that, emotional sensitivity, etc. It's great. Now, people often think, well, if you're emotional, it's not going to make you a great trader. Men who struggle with trading, it's not because they're like breaking down in tears and they're super sensitive and all the rest of it. It's pride a lot of the time and ego, so it's not even really an emotion necessarily, I wouldn't say, that causes men to struggle in trading. It's really that kind of bravado, thinking that they're better than they are. And I interview all of the students I take on board before I take them on board. You wouldn't believe the amount of people. They jump on that call and I'm like, so, give me an idea of some of the issues you're facing currently, and, I'll have a think about if I can help you here. And I don't have any issues in my trading. Okay, bro, why did you apply for this mentorship? you put on your thing that your trading performance is 5 out of 10, and
Yeah.
you want to be a consistent trader, which you're not, even though you've been trying for 5 years. You tell me you don't have any issues. Yeah, I'm actually pretty decent at it. I'm like, right, okay, well, see you later, man. There's nothing I
Yeah,
can do
because
for you.
what did he want then?
It's that type of thing that kills traders.
Yeah.
So the reason I think women tend to perform better in trading is just that they don't tend to have the same ego and pride that men do. And they are often actually able to deal with that pressure just a little bit better. Men can deal with external pressure, quite easily. It's the internal pressure, men's mental health is quite a big topic and stuff. It's the internal pressure and the pressure that we put upon ourselves that tends to really sort of hinder us. And women just seem to be able to deal with that just a little bit better. External pressure they tend not to be so good at, but they don't put those massive constraints and forces on themselves. And for men, it kind of leans into that pride ego thing. We're always trying to be that little bit better. We're always trying to push ourselves. And women, because they don't have that ego, etc., they're not putting all of that kind of pressure on themselves. They don't struggle with that internal thing quite as much as men do.
Yeah. And you know what that actually beautifully ties into? Being a born-again Christian, I would imagine that really strips away the ego, isn't it? So I can imagine now, being able to strip away that ego, it'll just allow for so much growth
for sure. Now look, pride is something that it's one of those a real kind of what we would call a pastor, right? A shepherd, someone who's been like a mentor to me in the faith. He said, pride is so evil. Pride is such an evil sin that it even hates itself. And the example that he gives is, you put two thieves in a room with each other, they'll sit and conspire about stealing stuff, and they'll talk about like the biggest thing they've ever sold. You put two proud people in a room with each other, they will literally hate each other. So pride is extremely, it's true though, right?
Yeah, no, it's true.
Pride is extremely destructive, and it's something that as I have gone on in the Christian faith now, coming up 5 years, in fact, I think it's more than 5 years now, but I become more, I'm finding it everywhere in my life. I'm like, it's down the back of the couch, it's under the pillow. It's just like, you think, oh my goodness, I'm starting to get this. And then you're like, oh my goodness, that is being prideful. But it is for sure, a lot of that gets taken away.
Yeah.
When I was converted, a lot of that got taken away, and you become much more aware of it, and so you can deal with it a lot better. But I'm by no means, I'm not like the most humble guy. I strive to be that, and pride is something I'm always trying to battle and to mortify is the term I would use. But for sure, having that larger scale perspective, having that the views that I do now, it has helped in eradicating some of those things without a doubt.
Yeah,
without a doubt.
100%.
And there is also that belief that God's in control. You have a bad losing period, He's got lessons for you in it. It's not for no reason. So, really leaning into that is a massive help. And I know at the end of the day, what do I trade for? Well, I trade for my wife. I trade for my daughter. I trade for my broader family. I trade for my church. And I trade for God, right? So that's who I'm doing this for. And if I have a righteous desire in doing all that, I know He's not going to let me down. He's never let me down. He's provided for me all the days of my life. I could go through the worst trading period ever. It could start today and go on for a year, let's say. I know He's going to, hold me up at the other side of it. So that's my confidence.
Yeah.
Even beyond my strategy, even beyond everything else, He's got me, and that's a massive weight off of my shoulders.
Yeah.
It's His responsibility to provide, and He's promised He will.
No, that's beautifully said. Like, there's so much in, I don't even like to see it as losing or something going bad, because depending on how you look at it, the learnings that you can get from something that can be determined as bad can be so beneficial. It's actually a good thing.
Without a doubt.
And sometimes the bad is the good, and the good can be the bad per se.
You'll always learn more from hardship than you will from prosperity.
Exactly.
It's in the valley that that warriors are made. It's not on the mountaintop. And you need to go through that valley. You need to be forged into that warrior in whatever field it is you're doing, whether you're an athlete, whether you're a business person, whatever. You need to go through those valley experiences. You need to be forged into that toughened warrior so that you can ascend the mountain in the first place. So I think it's for sure, hardship. We live in an age of comfort. You can whack the heating on, you can whack the AC on, you can microwave your food, all this stuff. So we're so used to everything being room temperature, if you like. Everything's just that Goldilocks zone, that all these any little thing, phone runs out of battery, bus is late, Uber's late, whatever, just sends people off. But all these little things, discomforts, inconveniences happening in your life, you shouldn't shun them. You should welcome them, and you should look for opportunities to grow out of them. And look, I'm not here preaching like I've got this mastered. I had a steak before we came here. I ordered medium rare. It came out medium well. I sent it back. I've not mastered this yet.
That's a big thing though. Medium rare is a lot better than medium. I will say that.
Well, it was like medium well. The thing was
even worse.
I was like, I'm going to put my shoe on the plate and eat that instead. And it was like, it wasn't a cheap steak. I was like, I said to the guy, I'm so sorry to say this. And he's like, no, it's okay. Like, you did order that. And but yeah, I by no means mastered these things. I don't want anyone to think there's a guy who's just got everything worked out and he just ticks all the boxes. I'm saying, do as I say. I'm no perfect example to follow, but the things I say are what I'm striving for. And I think if everyone's striving for these, don't follow me, follow these principles type of thing, because you're never going to find that perfect leader, that perfect example. Derive principles from people and don't put them up on a pedestal. Take a bite and spit out the bones. Take what's good, spit out the bones. And I think you should do that with everyone. You might not agree with everything I've said here, and that's totally fine. We have different perspectives, we have different sources that we're drawing from. But if you can listen to people in formats like this and take good from it and things that you can apply to your life, that's where progress comes from. And often you might go through something, whether it's education, whatever, a seminar, and there might be one thing that said that whole weekend and it changes your life. And I've even gone to like business conferences and stuff. I have a friend who runs these. I'm not super big into like business, not a keen interest of mine. He runs some of the biggest business conferences in Scotland and certainly in the UK. And he invites me along to these and I'll go along, and business isn't a huge interest of mine, but I can be sitting there the whole weekend with a notepad and pen, and 90% of it, 99% of it's nothing to me, and someone says one thing, and what I get from it may not have even been their intended point, but it just triggers a thought process, and that leads me on to something that revolutionizes maybe an area of my business, maybe an area of my life, maybe an area of my trading or anywhere else. So absolutely, yeah.
I think it goes back to the point that there's no such thing as a small thing, because something so small that you don't, like, it's so small you wouldn't even think of it, but then it could even be years later down the line, something clicks and you're like, oh, I remember that. And then it just cascades into, like, it's a snowball effect. And then the change that it has in your life is just incredible, isn't it?
I call this shoeboxing, right? Now,
shoeboxing?
Shoeboxing.
Okay.
So not like, like boxing, like shoeboxing, right? So my parents growing up, my mum collected ornaments, from her travels in India and all over. And, she doesn't put them in the bin when she wants to, get them off the mantelpiece or whatever. She puts them in a shoebox and they go in the attic, they go in the loft. Now, why? Why would anyone put stuff in a shoebox and put it in the loft? Well, it's because they don't need it now, but it's maybe not super valuable to them and, sitting on that table or whatever right now, but it is something that does have value, and maybe they don't need it right now, but they don't want to give it away. And at some point, she's going to go up into that loft and she's going to pull that shoebox down and she's going to pull that stuff out, and maybe she looks at it, maybe it brings back some memories, whatever, I don't know. Your knowledge, whether it's strategies that you currently trade that aren't yet working, whether it's little tidbits from business podcasts, whatever, that you don't quite know how to apply yet, keep it. Don't discard it. And this is something I say to students. They go, you know, if I come on and I learn all your strategies, do I have to forget everything I know? No, shoebox it. Put it in that box, put it on the shelf. In 2 years' time, in 2 months' time, in 5 years' time, in 5 months' time, who knows? You will be in a position where you can take that shoebox down off the shelf, you can open it back up, and some of that stuff in there, it's not going to be junk to you anymore. You're actually going to be able to use it and utilize it. So knowledge is so important, and so is experience. Trying not to overwrite. You know, we only have so much capacity in here, and many people, what they do is they learn something like a trading process or a strategy. Because it's not working, they overwrite it. You know, I remember videotapes, you know, you could tape over a video. That's what they're doing. They're just taping over it. And they've eradicated that. That could make you millions of pounds in 10 years' time, and you don't even know it. And you're just trying to eradicate it. Shoebox it. You know, shoeboxing is a massive thing for me.
That's a good way of looking at it, you know. I've never really thought about it like that. That's deep. Huh, that's definitely one for me to take away. I feel like this has been incredible, like so much value. And I just want to ask you just a few more questions if possible. Sure. On the topic of things that are becoming popular, I feel like since the pandemic, prop firms have exploded in popularity. Originally FTMO were definitely the pioneers and just the biggest within the scene. What impact have you seen that have on like your students per se? Because I know going from like a personal capital to then go into a challenge where you have, let's say 50K or 100K, it's a different ball game. Even I'd say if you have like a proper mechanical edge and you trust your strategy, seeing the £500, £1,000 in drawdown takes some getting used to. So in your group of students, how do you help to manage and lead them to deal with the challenges that come with prop firms?
Yeah, so look, to answer the first part of that question, what effect have I had, you know, have I seen prop firms have? It's been astronomical, to be honest. When I got started, it was like put 300 quid into a brokerage account and try and grow it. Now, albeit, you know, ESMA kind of came in 2016. Before that, we had access to a bit more leverage. But around then, if we just, you know, bring that forward, most people, when they got started, if they got started pre-2019, 2018, let's say, they had access to 1 to 30 leverage, you know, and maybe a few £1,000s in a brokerage account, which is almost inconsequential. Now, that was in a real lull in the markets where your average true range, the volatility, certainly in FX, had really taken a bit of a slump. Now, we saw that, you know, that was in a good place, sort of pre-2008, maybe up to 2010, volatility was all right. After that, through the teens, the volatility really dropped off and making money was pretty hard in FX. Post-COVID, the volatility's kind of picked up a little bit, you know, Trump and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
Fantastic. But it's always been difficult to make money, you know, until prop firms came along. And with prop firms being here, it's so much easier to make money. The majority of traders, the biggest hindrance to people who are really serious about this is not the ability, because people who are really serious about something will get good at it. I believe that talent is a very small thing. I do believe talent exists. I believe some people have natural giftings in certain areas that make them more, that they can have direct application to things like trading for sure. But I believe nurture is far more important than nature in a skill like trading. I think it's something that you create in yourself or in another person rather than, you know, you just have. So I think ability is very seldom the thing holding traders back. If they really love the markets, they will get good at it. Capital is the biggest thing that held traders back. And prop firms have answered that call. They've filled that gap where it's now no longer capital doesn't need to be a problem. Now, if you have a good few years track record, I'm sure you're aware in this country, power of attorney, POA. So you can manage capital under power of attorney for high net worth individuals, family, friends, you know, people you meet at networking events, whatever. So there's always access to that kind of stuff once you've got the record. The problem is most traders, by the time they've got the ability, they don't have a record to show. so they can't go and source capital privately.
Yeah.
Prop firms have answered that call and stepped up to the plate and said, we will fund you with money if you can pass this evaluation. And so we've seen some of our students, one student, Sai, I give this guy his flowers anytime I can. When I first spoke to him, he was in India. We picked him up end of 2023. He's done $400,000 since then from prop firms. He's done 160K with funding pips alone. 1,600% return on what he spent with funding pips.
Insane.
He calculated that all out. But yeah, 400K. So I sent him out a trophy earlier this year. We send out trophies to our members when they hit 100K in payouts. And so he was the first one in the mentorship to get the $250,000 club trophy, which is 250K in verified payouts, not just, funding. But yeah, people like that now, he's over in Dubai now and he's invested in property and stuff. His life has changed
massively
in a couple of years. And I'm so honored to have played even a tiny role in that. And, it's all him, I'm not taking anything from him. I provided him some tools. I provided him some education. I provided him some mentorship. He carried the boats for sure. But we have, a lot of other members who have done, multi six figures in funding. And, one of the trophies I had the pleasure of giving out in person to a member, Andy, when he had done 60K in 6 months. So 10K months back to back in payouts. That was awesome. I've seen this firsthand, the effect this has had on people's lives. And it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's absolutely amazing.
That's unbelievable. Those results are incredible. And I actually want to ask you, from those traders that really go above and beyond, what is it, or what do you see from them that you think helps them succeed? If you had to narrow, let's say if you had to narrow it down to 2 to 3 traits, if it's that.
Look, I mean, anything I say here is going to seem like a cop-out. I could say, consistency. Yeah. But really, consistency is the big thing. And it's not just consistency in, what they actually do when they're in a trade, in that trade process. But it's really consistency in everything that comes before and after. How they prepare for a trade, how they journal a trade, how they track their data. The guys, and this is where it's difficult to assess this, because you can look at people who are good at something and you can look at the things they do and you can say they're good at it because they do these things. But the question is, are they good at this because of all these things that they do? Or do they do all of these things because they're good at it and because they're serious? So to give you an example, and the answer is yes and no, neither and both. It's a combination of the two. It's a cycle.
Okay.
They're good at this and they're serious, so they do all of the other stuff, and because they do all the other stuff, they're producing results. So those two things go hand in hand. But yeah, it's their processes for sure. These people, they have an ingenuity about them. If they come up against hurdles, they come up against problems, they go and fix them. They're natural problem solvers. I say natural, but they are problem solvers. The 3 best traders who ever worked for me on the floor, we had guys with chemical engineering backgrounds, guys who came from law backgrounds, guys who came from finance backgrounds with degrees in finance. The 3 best traders who ever worked on the floor in the time that we were on the floor. Now, 3 years isn't a huge sample, but a joiner, a carpenter, and a bricklayer. That was their backgrounds.
Okay, interesting. I'm trying to see
the connection.
Yeah.
What it is it's the practical application of knowledge. So universities teach people what to think, not how to think, right? You work in a trade role, like not trading, but trade, like, bricklayer, plumber, joiner, electrician. It's constantly problem solving. It's constantly coming up against things that you didn't expect. It's constantly preparing, contingency planning, risk assessment, all the rest of it. These guys think on their feet and they're just continually solving problems, and they're actually practically applying with their hands and their mind knowledge and stuff that they've learned. University tends to produce people who are really, really book smart. But when it comes to actually applying that knowledge, that can only be gained through experience of practically applying it. Most people, when they come fresh out of uni, That's why they go into internships. It's why they go into some of these roles to get the hands-on experience of practically applying the knowledge so that they can then step into to being good at that job. When you come from a career where it's all just practically applying knowledge day by day, it's nothing is theoretical. It's all just actually doing it.
Okay.
When they then learn something, they can actually do it and actually apply it. Converting theory into practice is something that you need to learn. It's not just learning the theory and the knowledge. You then need to learn how to apply it.
Yes.
And guys who come from that background, now this is my best guess. You know, I'm 3 people over 3 years in a huge sample.
Yeah.
But this is my best guess. Is that's why.
Yeah.
And I could be totally wrong, you know, but that's my belief.
Yeah.
And what I observed. I don't think it's totally, you know, I think it makes sense, right?
Yeah. No, 100%. I think that's a great observation, and it just goes to show that at the end of the day, just apply what you know and just do it, because the quitter never wins, the winner never quits. It's just the same old story.
For sure.
So yeah, man. Honestly, Sam, today's been absolutely incredible. I've personally learned so much. I've always wanted to interview because you're 100% one of the pioneers of the trading space, and you bring so much expertise and wisdom and knowledge that anyone, even outside of trading, could learn from you. So thank you so much for your time today. We definitely need to do a part 2 where I come to Scotland. So I'll definitely try to sort something out, because I feel like we just touched the surface on a lot of things, and I'd love to get into more details about some other stuff. So yeah, thank you so much for coming on today, man.
Look, I just want to say thank you very much for the invite. It's been a great pleasure, and you know, I'm very, very humbled by the things that you've said as well, and you know, it's been an honor.
No, thank you so much, man. I appreciate it, bro. Oh, sorry, just hit the mic. To everyone at home, thank you so much for tuning in. Please be sure to drop your favorite takeaway, because there was an absolute ton today. So make sure you drop it in the comments. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and also be sure to follow Sam on all of his socials up here. Thank you so much for tuning in, and be sure to stay tuned for the next one. Peace.